Hello, everyone. This is Vet Talk, and I'm your host, Sergeant Gonzalo Duran. Today's honored guest is Isaiah Vega from the Brooklyn Conservative Party and political mastermind himself. Thank you for being here today, Isaiah.
Thank you for inviting me back on the show, Gonzalo. It's such a pleasure to be back here with you.
Now, the reason I brought you back is one, we just finished a political, the elections for 2024, and some people are going to be happy, some people are going to be mad. Let's talk about the people that are happy.
The people that are happy. Well, I know a lot of people are happy that President Donald J. Trump will be returning to office this January. I am one of those people. I did vote for him. And, seeing the last 4 years, a lot of people either decided to stay home, and a lot of people decided, they're going to take a gamble with President Trump.
Yeah, no, well, speaking about those numbers, let's say from what I remember, a large percent, let's say 50% of Hispanics nationally voted for Trump. I can't speak about the statistics at the national level too much, but at the local level in the Bronx, I know a large percentage of African Americans and Hispanics voted for Trump in the polls, whereas the numbers did decrease a lot for Vice President Harris on her loss.
Yes. So there's two factors to that. Yes, a lot of people, especially blacks and Hispanics, did switch their votes to Donald J. Trump. The other factor is a lot of people decided they're going to stay home, which led to increased percentages in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, and especially in Queens. In New York City, Donald J. Trump did about 30% of the vote here.
Well, yes, and from let's say I don't want to call it I call it the red wave that's happened, and with that being said, now we have the Reds, the red team with the executive branch, the Senate, and the House.
Yes.
But there was not that much change when it comes to, let's say, local elections. I know for the Bronx, there was no victories in the 2024 elections. And in 2025, there's really only one hot seat that people are even talking about right now. And, the future is really open. Can there be changes? Will there be changes? It's still all up in the air.
Yes. So what you described in terms of the red wave, I call it more of a national realignment. We're seeing a lot of, immigrant communities, a lot of minority communities starting to shift more towards the red because of the issues that they're talking about, which is kitchen table issues, crime, economy, inflation, prices of gas, groceries, things like that. And, going forward, the Team Red can capitalize off of this. Yes, we did not have many local victories here in New York City, especially the Bronx, but from what we saw in terms of the local districts, we can see, coming in the next year, we can work off of those numbers and hopefully make change there. The Bronx already has one Republican in office, Councilwoman Christy Marmorato. We also saw, a lot of movement in other council districts. I know Council District 14, which is the Western Bronx, University Heights towards Mount Hope. We can definitely, see a flip there. We can possibly see a flip even in the South Bronx, maybe Castle Hill or down towards the Concourse. We'll see.
And just so the people that may not be too politically savvy, when we're talking about the very grassroots of politics, and we're talking about not only the EDs but the ADs of these districts, which is let's say a couple blocks of each other. These are conglomerate blocks of different areas, and the numbers did increase. But we're not talking about tens of thousands. We're talking about a couple dozens and here and there, But the point is, in those areas, if somebody, let's say, became a district leader in that area, they would have an increase of individuals that they know they can reach out to because they voted for that particular party.
Correct. You see, the Bronx always has had a low turnout for, I would say, decades now. But from what we're seeing from Team Red, especially the Conservative Party in Team Red within the Bronx, they are working very hard to register people and increase turnout where the Democrats are losing great ground.
Yes, and particularly, we're Vet Talk is the parent company, or excuse me, is it's the parent company for Vet Talk is Devil Dog USA. So we're a nonprofit. So we stay bipartisan, but these are information that people need to know and stuff like that. So Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, family working parties, independents, it's all the same for us. The goal, though, is that if you see that you're, let's say, in your civic engagement, that if you're civically engaged, that your party is making a difference or not. And if you're losing something, then you have to think about what's going on. So let's say, let's touch on a little bit about those kitchen topics that you're talking about, politics, safety, and businesses and stuff like that. Let's say those individuals that came here legally or illegally decades ago have worked their way to start their own businesses, raise their families, and now they want to see, let's say, a better outcome than what's going on right now. And that's why you would see certain things sway in a different direction that's been the norm. Because, before, I can't say for the national level because that changes every couple of years, but at the local level, you'll see things not change progressively for decades. I mean, the Bronx, you mentioned Christy Marmorato winning office 2 years ago, and she's the first Republican in the Bronx in 40 years, first female Republican ever. And, New York City only has a handful of non-Democratic elected officials. So at the national level, if you see this movement change, you expect it to go at the lower level. And to be honest, I thought Trump was going to win New York, but he lost by almost 1 million votes. If he would have won by 2 million votes, the vote trickle down would have made changes to the local elections for sure.
Definitely. And part of why I think Trump did not win New York was Joe Biden exiting the race. A lot of people thought that if Joe Biden stayed in the national race, that a lot of states that historically have gone blue many, many times would have flipped to red. And New York, was described as being in play during the time where Joe Biden and Donald Trump had gone into a debate against each other. Now, I knew, from a certain standpoint, when Kamala Harris entered the race that, flipping New York seemed to be impossible at that point. But I thought Trump would have done so well enough that we would have seen a lot more legislative flips, especially on the local level. However, it seems that we still have our work cut out for us on Team Red.
You bring up a point that I never thought about, honestly. I was actually in favor of Biden continuing the race because it would have given the other side a leg up. That's the way I would have looked at it. But statistically speaking, I see your point that you're making because she came in strong with all the,
Right. All the media.
Yeah. And, it did favor her until the end,
Yes. We call it the honeymoon phase.
There we go. Well, with that being said, for Vet Talk, the reason why we talk politically on occasion, on quarterlies and during election time is so that we can try to push agendas. In the past, we've had veteran advocacy organizations talk about how we can increase our, state funding and programs and resources. Well, the only way that's going to happen is if, one, the organizations rally and advocate for it, and two, veterans become engaged into politics. So we're not picking sides and we're not telling you what to do, but we're saying, look, if you don't get involved, changes aren't going to be made. So, I knew the percentage of veterans in office, years ago, but things have changed this year as well. This upcoming, what do they call it, the House or this upcoming class? Or?
Yeah, this upcoming class of Congress.
So could you give us a little information about the veterans that are coming into?
Of course. So in this coming Congress, I believe it's the 119th Congress, there will be 86 veterans entering office in both the Senate and the House. In New York, we are represented by 2 veterans. In New York's 18th Congressional District, it is Pat Ryan, who's a Democrat, and in New York's 1st Congressional District, it is Nick LaLota, a Republican. So this makeup is both Democrats and Republicans. 189 veterans did run for office this year across the federal level, and only 86 of them won. A very unfortunate number, but having the veterans' voice in Congress, whether Republican or Democrat, is essentially important. And as you said, advocating for the issues that affect veterans and especially their families.
So, once again, we're not telling you what to do or anything like that. But I would say, once again, if you're not advocating for your basic rights or whatever you feel passionate about, then step up to the game and try to get it out there. There's elections every year. I can assure you on that there's elections every year and this position opened, everything from judicial level to district leaders and county levels to legislative positions like city council, Congress, mayor, or even AG or no, AGs are voted on.
Yeah, AGs are voted.
AGs are voted on and so forth. So those are opportunities that not only pay very well, but also shape the fabric of our country. And serving for office, serving the United States Armed Forces is one thing. Serving in the electoral capacity is another thing, and I believe personally that veterans have a leg up on that with, the stability and structure that we receive during training and our service. It gives you the opportunity that a lot of people don't have ability to say, world-roundedness, educational possibilities, and organizational skills, leadership abilities. All, these are all things that we look towards our politicians and say, that's what we want.
Of course.
So, is there any, let's say, for the moment, since I have you here, is there any particular race that in the 2024 elections that you saw that was interesting besides the Trump versus Biden?
Of course. So, since we're on the topic of veterans, there is one particular race here in New York City, especially in Brooklyn, where I'm from, that I found to be really interesting, and it is the election of Senator-elect Stephen Chan. Stephen is a former Marine. He's he's a former cop. He's an educational advocate, and this year was a very key race in determining the makeup of the New York State Legislature. The upper house, which is the state Senate, was controlled by still is controlled by the Democrats, but they had a supermajority, meaning it's a veto-proof majority. So if the Democrats wanted to pass legislation, they could do so, even bypassing the governor's veto. With the election of Stephen Chan, who's a Republican, the supermajority was broken, and it's the only seat flip we saw in the upper house, the state Senate, this year in New York, and it was in Brooklyn. And since he's a veteran, I thought I'd give him a shout out. He's a very good friend of mine, and it was very pleasing to watch, very interesting to watch, because it was a very, very hotly contested race.
Off the top of my head, I remember a few of the candidates. Now, is he the younger looking?
I wouldn't say
Marine
younger looking. No, he's more of an older looking guy.
I have to double check. Once again, it's important. There's a lot of candidates that were running, but I'm very intrigued now that I know. I knew there was cops and veterans, Marines, but I didn't know there was maybe more than one or two.
Yes, I believe the person you're thinking of is Marco Kepi. He ran for state senate in the 23rd State Senate District, which is the North Shore of Staten Island and the South Shore of Brooklyn, which is Coney Island, Manhattan Beach, that area. He is a former Marine, and he is a current NYPD cop. Unfortunately, he lost. It was a very close race. I think he garnered about 46.5%. So
that's pretty darn close.
It is pretty darn close. Unfortunately, it was less than the last time, which was in 2022, where the candidate there, I believe he was also ex-military. He garnered about 49%. Albeit it is a presidential year, so Democratic turnout is increased, but it was just a Democrat versus Republican situation, no conservative.
Look, I'm going to tell you right there, those numbers right there are nothing to be, joke about. Those are close. That's a close knit right there that could sway almost anywhere. We're talking about a couple hundred to maybe a few thousand votes right there. That's all that is. And 3 veterans had that position right there. So look, once again, the possibilities are endless, starting with, having that type of background. So I employ those that are interested. Go to your local party, get civically engaged with your community, join, a civic association, a community board, advisory board. There's a lot of things you can get into and work your way up the chain, just like you did back in the military. Thank you for bringing those names up and those numbers. Once again, it's it's very impressive, and for veterans to have that opportunity, I'm very proud to hear something like that.
Yeah, it's very important that veterans have a voice in politics. And whether it's the advisory board, the community board, running for office, or even starting a nonprofit and, trying to push for change, there's always a need for advocacy no matter what day, what age, what time we're living in. And, we need a voice. People need a voice. And if they don't have a voice, then eventually someone's going to say, oh, well, they're not talking, so might as well disregard them.
Yeah. And to even expand on that, there's different types of categories or genres that you can think about. Disabled individuals, the LGBT community, whatever, cops, and whatever your advocacy that you want to push for more. These are to get a seat or to make the change, you have to be able to sit in the table and get a part of it. And if you're not involved, then you're in the sidelines complaining about no change being made when you can have an opportunity. And that could be either volunteering with somebody or joining a campaign, voting or whatnot. All those things combined makes a difference. So you have, more than just looking at the TV and yelling, they didn't win, or, come on, what are you doing? So, and, we're both civically engaged in our communities and even broader than that. But, one of the things that I know that you're civically engaged for is to try to increase conservatism within not only the Brooklyn, but in New York City.
Of course.
And you guys I think Brooklyn has one of the best records that there is in the city. You have one of the highest rate of elected officials. Mm-hmm. That's for one that I know within the party, for sure. What do you obtain that to?
Well, I obtained that to the unity and the strength of the Brooklyn Conservative Party in tandem with the Brooklyn Republican Party. The fact that we're able to work together so effectively and concentrate on not only preserving our current elected officials, but gaining ground in districts that are favorable to us, I feel as though we have not only a strong coalition now, but a brighter future ahead of us. And I'm really looking forward to this coming year where we see some city council districts that we feel that we can make some great inroads in.
You make a good point. So now that we finished the 2024 elections, we're walking into the 2025 elections. And the 2025 elections have city councils, judges. I believe at this odd year you have district leaders and county level positions. And then the mayor and public advocate. Am I missing any?
The controller?
The comptroller. There we go. That's an important one.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there any big races or any word that you're keeping an eye on?
Well, I am keeping an eye on the mayor's race because having a strong candidate there that will help our down ballot is very key in flipping a lot of city council races. In New York, you tend to see a lot of people vote for the top and then their vote kind of trickles down to the bottom, where you get a lot of drop-off. So having a strong top of the ticket is very key in winning a lot of our races. But I'm also looking at more of the city council races. The local level is the most important, I believe, because that is where change truly begins. And so, I'm looking at the Bronx, I'm looking at Queens, I'm even looking at, my area in Brooklyn, seeing where we can make inroads and really push conservatism forward. Because even if we don't win, we're planting seeds for the future. All these terms that are coming up, there are 4-year terms minus the party positions, which are always 2-year terms. And so, we have to win big next year for Team Red if we want to make long-lasting change. Because, 4 years is a long time. It's just as long as the president. And although, we have another year coming after that, 2026, for the city level, we're not going to have another race until 4 years from now. So, it's important that we win big next year.
Yes, and I know you're holding a event this weekend. I mean, it's not going to air. It's going to be past the air of this today. But can you give us a little bit more information on what you've been working on?
So what I've been working on in tandem with other conservative leaders across the city is that we're going to host an event in the Bronx tomorrow at 3 p.m. where we will discuss our plans for the future. It's called the Viable Candidate Event, and we will be joined by 20 to 25 conservative candidates across the city that will explain their platform and how we are going to move forward this coming year.
Now, this event, Viable Candidate, that's something that I've heard, and I've always seen a negative viewpoint. So naming that, I think, was there something behind that right there?
Well, a viable candidate is someone, I believe, that has a passion for what they do. And on top of that, they're willing to work for it. People always, want to say, oh, this person's not viable, just on the face alone. But when you look into it, when you look into their history, when you look into their credentials, what they've been doing for the community, that's how you see a viable candidate. And I believe tomorrow we'll be seeing a lot of viable candidates that have worked hard for their community, that have a plan going forward, and that would shape the city into something better.
Yeah, and that's the well put. For me, the reason I sound a little bit negative there is because when people say viable candidate, they're always talking about how much money they bring in, or how much of a huge presence that they have. But let's be realistic. This is very small outside of the Democratic Party. For New York City, once again, we're not trying to pick sides, and this is bipartisan. But we're talking about a specific topic right here. The Democratic Party has a stronghold in New York City, so there's very little momentum that the other parties can go into. And I'm talking about the Green, Independent, Libertarian. All of them, not just one particular group. And then the circulation of having somebody working for you having a leg up to get into office right after you within your your spectrum. Once again, to me that looks a little too nepotism and cronyism in my belief. So having, let's say, an event like you're having tomorrow, where you're putting all these, let's say, conservatives in this room, now gives them an ability to say, we're here, we have a presence, we're whatnot. Maybe even one of these individuals might pop up as a leader from there, But until you get people standing and speaking out loud, you will never know.
It's true.
And hopefully one day funding is spirited. Like I keep close information on my local races, because I believe the local races are more important at the national level, because what affects you, personally, is at the local level. And there was one congressional race where the incumbent had like $9 million, and the next toll in the bottom was about $50,000,
Right.
and then the one after that was a couple $100. So you can see the difference in the amount right now. And this is a topic that I just want to touch on quickly. But Mayor Adams right now is the first indicted mayor in office, sitting mayor, and a large portion of it has to do with the way he got his funding. And Jamali Williams would have jumped at the opportunity, but the same donors that are being indicted for Adams are the same donors that Jamal had.
Right.
So that stopped him real quick from stepping up. He might come out later. Maybe he's waiting for those indictments to see what happened, see if he'll get in trouble from as well, But, for me, I try to look at and support individuals that I see working in the community, people that are functioning, and not to be a bias or anything, but if I see a veteran, then, I try to give them a leg up in trying to work with them, So this viable candidate event that you're having, I'm glad you're having it. Is there anything that you're working on in the future, or maybe in your own party that you're working on that you want people to know about?
For now, I will say that we're working on a lot of city council races. We're getting candidates together. We're preparing them for the uphill journey. And I believe this viable candidate event will help, people gain confidence in what they're doing, especially, the upcoming races. And, we're going to show that money isn't everything. A viable candidate isn't just how much money they can bring in, it's how many people they can bring in. Because with an army, it's worth much more than $10,000.
Well put, well put. And I've seen candidates get 36,000 votes or more with a couple $100. So it is possible. And, the numbers favor, a certain party. But, once again, we just saw the executive branch, the state, and the House be taken over. And it wasn't that hard. It wasn't that hard. So, let's see changes back. If you have a problem with the way things are going, you know what you could do? Step up. It's not that hard. So if anybody wanted to reach out, maybe run for or speak to you regarding running for an office in Brooklyn for the Conservative Party, how would they go about reaching you?
The best way to reach me is via social media. You can follow any of my socials, Vega, FORNY, so Vega4NY, on Twitter and Instagram. On Facebook, it's Vega4 New York. If you want to reach out to me via email, you can go to isaiahovega@gmail.com. That is ISAIAH, like how it's spelled in the Bible, OVEGA@gmail.com.
Yes, and Vet Talk's parent organization is Devil Dog USA Incorporated, which is a nonprofit, so we are bipartisan. If you're interested in running for office or in some capacity being more civically engaged, feel free to reach out to us at ceo@devildogusainc.org, and we'll be happy to push you in the direction that you want to be pushed into. And that being said as well, if you want to come on the show and speak, whether it's if you're a nonprofit or you have some kind of resource or you want to engage with the veteran community, or once again, you want to talk politics here for not only the veterans but the community at large, we'll be happy to have you. Feel free to reach out at ceo@devildogusainc.org. Until then, as always, God bless America.